I'm a 25-year-old guy. My name is Michael. I do have one really unusual story that most of my family or some friends doesn't believe me, but luckily though, I wasn't alone when this happened. I was actually on a camping trip with my best friend Jacob, but his girlfriend Lauren and my girlfriend Cassie. We are living in the northern part of California. And I am not going to get much the precise location since for our privacy reasons. But this particular summer of 2022, we decided that we wanted to go camping since we had no other big plans for the whole summer, but we couldn't even agree on where to go camping. I mean, the girls want to go to the beach, or like to a nearby lake, or to the ocean, or I mean, me and Jacob, we were talking about if we were camping in the woods somewhere, but we almost argue, or at least debating what location we would be going to. I mean, we had always been camping all together, even before we were even dating the girls. But I suggest, why not we go somewhere that hasn't even been crossed our minds? And they were like, what did you have in mind, Michael? Well, how about we going in the desert? They are all like, just like, why would we camp in a desert? They ask. Well, have you ever thought about it? I mean, for example, if we were in the middle of nowhere, we can see the stars and it will be an incredible experience. And boy, I rest almost now right now regret I even suggested this place. Yeah, but anyways, Jacob asked, where did you had in mind? Since part of the North California actually has some dry areas, some almost like a desert. Well, how about this old abandoned gold rush town further up north? The word is old coal mine or coal town, gold town that has been abandoned since the late 1800s. And I had to put this out. Throughout the entire California state, there are tons of different old towns that has been abandoned by either by the late 1800s or even early 1900s. Most of this were during the gold booms of the gold rush and even mining of other metals. But when I suggested this idea, the others was like, I don't know about that, said Lauren. I mean, does it even sound dangerous? Well, would you rather stay going some place that you have been before? Do you can just, you know, I mean, it would have been not the same thing. I even tried to convince Cassie that we should go, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't even want to go. But I promised her that it will be fine. And since the nearest old abandoned ghost town was something like at least 4 to 5 hours drive from here, so and I told her we can take my car and we can put the as much supplies that we needed, and I managed to convince them. But if I could go back to my 1 year old, my only back 1 year ago to around 2022 and kick my own butt to telling them not go there, but you may understand why. So for the next couple of days, we actually prepare ourselves for going for our summer camp trip, and even I wish that we didn't. But before we went, my parents, they managed to convince me to bring with at least some form of weapons, just in case if we would run into some animals like cougars or even, I don't know, coyotes or something like that, or other strange people. I was like, well, what did you have in mind? My dad actually gave me his shotgun. I was like, Dad, are you sure about this? Isn't it unnecessarily with just a shotgun? I can just take a knife with me. Or or I know, a pistol or something. But he was very much firm that I take it. So I couldn't even argue on that. So I grabbed the shotgun. And my dad even gave me a list of about dozens of bullets, just in case if I would need it. Because you never know, he said. I should point out, even though this is not irrelevant, but my dad is a former Marine, so even though he has never actually been in any form of official war zones, but he knows at least always being prepared just in case. I was like, okay. So I brought the shotgun, the rifles, the ammunitions, the ammunitions with the shotgun. And Jacob actually brought his dad's handgun, which I was surprised because I told him that I had my dad's shotgun, but he said it better be being more prepared just in case if something would happen. I was like, yeah, but at least have the handgun unloaded because my shotgun wasn't even loaded when we drive over there. And at least the girls felt a little bit safer now we had at least some form of weapons that we could protect us. So on the ride there, we talked about this place. The girls asked me what I know about this place, and well, I told them I don't know. I don't know so much, but at least what I've been told that this is an old gold mine town back in the early 1800s and was abandoned sometimes in the 1870s, I believe it was, sometimes shortly after the Civil War, and when the gold mine was depleted and the town was abandoned eventually. And since then, no one actually have been there, or at least lived there for over 100 years or so. They asked me what kind of animals that we should expect in this area. Well, I said no bears, since it was a little bit like a dry environment, since most bears prefer like more forest areas. But I told them maybe coyotes, some foxes, and perhaps even cougars, like mountain lions. That made Cassie a bit scared. She told me that maybe this wasn't a good idea to even go there. But I told her we have weapons and we know when they will arrive. Since we weren't even... But then Lauren asked, where in this ghost town are we supposed to live? I mean, unlike if you're going to stay in this old saloon slash hotel. And Jacob's like, yep, that's where we're going to stay. Lauren's like, oh, you're crazy. You don't know how old that place is, and you probably don't. I'm kidding, Lauren. I'm kidding. We brought tents with us, so don't worry. But we will explore the town, though. And as we can do. Since no one actually lived there, as we thought at least. After almost 5 hours, we arrived. But since we didn't park the car just shortly out only but in the outskirts of the small town, like only maybe 10-15 feet from the actual small parking spot that we found, we unloaded the car and we searched for a good spot to be camping, and we found it. After we had set up the camp, we walked around. Since it was still daylight, I think it was around 1 p.m. or something like that in the afternoon. So we decided to split up and walk around and explore as much as possible. And there were a lot of buildings still standing, but others were in other very bad condition. Some had collapsed or some had been completely been destroyed by the weather. I'm surprised that most of these buildings were even standing after over 100 years of bad weather in the area. And or if any locals had even been there to take apart some of the buildings, like the metals or anything. But when we met up again around maybe an hour later, Jake suggested that we should go to the old gold mine outside town. But that I was much against, because you don't go in an old abandoned mines, because it could be dangerous. But Jacob was firmly that he wanted to just go there to see what it's like. Or I said, okay, but we don't go in that far, because you don't know what can happen. All abandoned mines are very dangerous. Even I knew that, at least for safety. But the girls, they won't want to go in. So just put me and Jacob. So We told the girls, well, we will back in less than 5 minutes. We walked around and we did see some old mining equipment like axes, shovels, and but Jacob wanted to go deeper. But I told him no is no because I pointed my flashlight on the wood support beams. I told him those are probably so bad condition that any slight full movement they can break off and bury you under tons of rock. And I don't want to do that happen. I don't want to lose my best friend, I told him. So he agreed. So we went back to the camp. We just hang out there, talked, and in the evening we made some lunch, like some dinner, like beans and bacon. And I was right. But as the dark wind came, the whole sky was filled with stars, more than you can actually see in the town itself. Cassie was like, "This is amazing." So during the day like that, after dinner, we just sit there, played cards and some in the during the fire camp lights, and but after around I think it was maybe almost 1 in the morning, we decided to go back to our tents to get some sleep. The next day, it was like the same that the day before. We did some exploring in town. We found a lot of very interesting things. Like it was like the people just left it just yesterday. Like the old school was still standing and had some of the tablets like they were running on, and some of the books was really good condition, and the old church was standing, and just. But it was one thing that Lauren found when she was with Jacob in one of the small houses that she found bones, like animal bones, like small bones, like rabbit bones, fox bones, or sheep or liver, they could have been. But those bones were not that old. They were like almost been, if someone or some animal had just been there eating. Even though Jacob was more as trying to brush it off, thought like, what if it's like if there's a rabbit bone, maybe there was a fox or something that was here using the old building as some sort of shelter or home, which doesn't make sense. Some animals could use old structures as home. It depends. But she was not firmly that this was not a fox, because there were no signs of any teeth marks of any predator animals on it. But Jacob still brushed it off. But back in at the camp that same evening, when we talked about our day, Lauren brought it up. Jacob tried to say it's nothing. But I was really curious to know more about this. She actually even brought back the bone with her. So I looked at her, at the bone, and I was like, yeah, it is confirmed. This is not an animal bone. That's not made of an animal, but it is. Jacob was like, how would you know? And I should mention this. Not only that my dad was a former Marine, but my family's hunters, including myself. And I had been trained to be observed signs of any prey that had been eaten by these predators. I point out this bone has no bite marks from any predators or anything, and I should also point out there are cut marks on it. There is no animals using cut marks on it. And since I also point out this bone seems to be quite fresh, I will say only a couple of days old. That made Lauren and Casey a little bit scared. But I managed to convince her and Lauren that no matter what happens, we will have Jacob will have his handgun, and I will have my shotgun in a tent with us. So that night, things actually seemed to be going at least normal as the first. But Casey, she woke me up in the middle of the night, said it sounded like something was outside the tent, walking around. And since the campfire has been put out already, and since there were only the moonlight, but it was like half of moonlight, and we couldn't see exactly So I told her, just it's probably an animal. But she wasn't uneasy about that either. She said, it doesn't sound like an animal. It's like like if something was walking on two legs. I told her, don't worry. So, but then she told me to just listen. So I did. It's nothing. But as before I was about to say that, sure enough, clearly in a short distance from the tent, I can hear something, walking on two legs. But then suddenly, it stopped. And then, it was silence. So I thought, maybe this was just nothing to worry. But then, it happened again. But this time, it was not just one. I think it was maybe it's two or even perhaps three other footsteps. Now I was getting worried. And then suddenly, we heard this loud yelling outside, "Leave our town!" And I was like, heck no, I'm not taking to this. So I grabbed a shotgun, opened up the tent enough, and fired a warning shot in the air. And I said, "Leave us alone. We are armed." But the sound of the footsteps only for a short distance, and they somehow screamed out, "Leave now!" And then suddenly, rocks was throwing out of tents. I was like, screw this, I don't want to stay here anymore. So I told Cassie to just get dressed as fast as she could. I will keep these people off. At the time, Jacob also had left his tent, and Lauren had also got dressed as quickly as possible, and they were already in the outside. We told them, "Bro, leave this stuff. Leave. Just grab your phones, and we will run off this place as much as possible." And we did. I grabbed some more of the ammunitions I had, and all of us took off. We ran as fast as we could all the way to the car. I was hoping that these people hadn't even slashed tires. If they did, we would have been 5 hours in the middle of nowhere. And as Jacob had pointed out, no cell service out there. So we would have been pretty much screwed if we had been at the car has any damage. But lucky though, the car was unharmed. We jumped in, and as Jacob pointed out, they were after us. I told them to use my shotgun and fire at least 2 warning shots, one in the air and near them. I didn't want them to be that he was used to hit them or anything, but just try to scare them. But it still doesn't even seem to be working. But they came right after us. I can actually see that what they were throwing. I heard they threw rocks at my car. Some of it on the dents on the hood and even the back window. But the car started up and we took off. And I really took off. I sped off like fast as I could. And the rocks still happened. After a moment, they stopped. But I told myself, I'm not stopping for anything. After almost 2 hours of driving at fast speed, I slowed down and stopped for a moment, and we talked about what just happened. And what happened? Or did we all imagine it? So I got out of the car. I used a flashlight to inspect some of the damage on the car, just to see if there was any serious. Luckily, it wasn't any particular damage, though. Only a small dent on the back part of the car, but that was something I could live with. But we decided, screw this, we are going home. The girls were scared, but during the ride back home, they fell asleep. But me and Jacob, we talked about this. We discussed who could it have been. I was like ghost, but it wasn't. But the only conclusion that we can come up with is that since this town has been abandoned for so long, and some people, like maybe homeless people or something, had decided to move into this town and use it as their own home, since no one actually did bother to even look after this place. That makes sense. So the next day, early the next morning, when we actually arrived to my house, my parents was up. They were around maybe 9 in the morning. They were quite surprised to see us. But They saw us barefoot and like, why are you home so early? We thought you were gone for the whole weekend. But I told the girls to get in the bathroom to take a shower too, and they did. Meantime, me and Jacob, we sat down in the kitchen with my parents, telling them everything. My mom was shocked and horrified. My dad was like, was Ariel hurt? People shook their heads and said no, only frightened, but luckily we used the shotgun over to keep them away. But Jacob pointed out that they didn't even seem scared. They didn't even care if they were even get shot at. So my parents asked me what town we went to or where we go. Told them the ghost town of our town, 5 hours away. My dad looked at me and said, "Son, that place is known to have a lot of problems. People had gone there and gone missing over the years." I didn't even know that, I said. No, because most people don't talk about it. That's the reason that most people don't even want to go there. But if you had known if we were going there, well, if you told us, we should have told you right away what that. Yeah, I should have, I thought myself, because I never did tell my parents that we were even going there. But I told my parents maybe we should mention this to the girls about this, the reason that's part. But it didn't make it at any point anyways, because they later find out from some other people that they talked about this place. They scolded out me and Jacob for probably that we knew about it, but we told them we didn't until after we came back home. Ever since then, if we weren't camping, we might just go to the beach or just doing camping in forest. So if you wanted to go to an old ghost town for camping or exploring, just prepare for some strange people come living there despite that, but always prepare.